before algorithms decided what was cool. There was a backyard in Pasadena, California, and a kid with a guitar who was about to change rock music forever. His name was Eddie Van Halen, and nobody outside of Pasadena had heard of him yet. But that was about to change. This is how 4 kids from the San Gabriel Valley became one of the greatest rock bands in history. The Van Halen brothers. The Van Halen family wasn't American. Eddie and his brother Alex were born in the Netherlands. Their father, Jan, was a jazz musician, a saxophonist who played dance halls across Europe. Jan Van Halen was the reason his sons had music in their blood. He played clarinet and saxophone, and he made sure his boys learned piano early. And I mean early. Eddie was playing classical piano by ear before he was 10 years old. Here's the part people forget. Eddie Van Halen won piano competitions as a kid, multiple years in a row. And he couldn't even read sheet music. He learned everything by ear. That ability to hear music and reproduce it, that's what made him unstoppable on guitar later. Here's where the story gets good. Eddie was learning drums, Alex was on guitar. But while Eddie was out delivering newspapers to pay for his drum kit, Alex secretly got on those drums and got really, really good. When Eddie finally noticed, instead of getting mad, he made a decision. Fine, you play drums, I'll take the guitar. That switch changed rock music history. By 1972, the brothers had formed a band. They called themselves Mammoth. No record deal, no manager, just a PA system they were renting out of necessity, and a circuit of backyard parties, high school gyms, and local parks that drew hundreds of kids every weekend. The PA system they were renting? It belonged to a kid named David Lee Roth. Roth had actually auditioned for the band and been turned down, but he had the equipment, so he charged them $10 a night. Eddie and Alex quickly realized, this guy has something. The charisma, the showmanship, he was unlike anyone they'd ever seen. They stopped paying the rental fee and started paying him a cut instead. David Lee Roth was now in the band. Mammoth became Van Halen in 1974, and they set their sights on the Sunset Strip, the most competitive rock and roll proving ground in America. The goal was Gazzarri's. The owner said they were too loud. They got in anyway. Night after night, Van Halen tore through the Strip. Word spread fast. You had to see this band. Not because of the songs, because of the guitarist. Eddie Van Halen was doing things on that instrument nobody had ever seen before. Let me tell you what Eddie was actually doing, because unless you play guitar, it's hard to understand why this was so revolutionary. Most guitarists use one hand to fret notes and the other to pick. Eddie started using both hands on the fretboard simultaneously, a technique called two-handed tapping. Notes were flying out of that guitar faster and cleaner than anyone thought possible. He put a version of this technique on the debut album, a solo called Eruption. 1 minute and 42 seconds. No band, no backing track, just Eddie. Guitar players heard it and stopped dead. Some of them quit. Some of them started over. Eruption didn't just influence guitarists. It redefined what the instrument could do. And here's what really separates Eddie from everyone else. He built his own guitars. That red, white, and black striped guitar you've seen 1,000 times, the Frankenstrat, Eddie made that himself. He wasn't waiting for guitar companies to catch up to his sound. He was ahead of them by a decade. In 1976, a man in platform boots and black and white makeup walked into Gazzarri's. Gene Simmons of Kiss, at the time one of the biggest rock acts on the planet, had heard about this band from Pasadena. He watched them play, and he did something almost no rock star of that era would do for an unknown band. He offered to pay for their demo tape. Simmons flew them to Los Angeles, put them in a professional studio, and they recorded what would become their first proper demo. It should have been their ticket to a record deal. But here's where the story twists. No label signed them off that demo. Not one. Van Halen was rejected across the board. But they kept playing, kept packing clubs, kept building the legend one sweaty night at a time. And eventually, the right person showed up. Ted Templeman was a producer at Warner Brothers Records. He caught Van Halen at the Starwood Club in Hollywood in 1977. By his own account, he knew in the first song. He signed them immediately. They recorded the debut album in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Most bands take months. Van Halen walked in, played their live set, and walked out with one of the greatest debut albums in rock history. Van Halen was released in February 1978. It hit number 19 on the Billboard 200. It would eventually sell over 10 million copies in the United States alone. 6 weeks on the road with Black Sabbath as the opening act, and suddenly no one was calling them the opening act anymore. Track 5 of that album was Eruption, a minute 42 of one man playing guitar. No context, no explanation, just proof. The rock world hit pause, and everyone asked the same question. Who is this guy? If you want to know what happened next, the albums, the fights, the split, and the legacy Eddie left behind, episode 2 is coming. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And if you play guitar, drop your favorite Eddie Van Halen moment in the comments. I want to know.